if I were human and picking a path? Tough call. Shahada. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. Might hit different if I had a soul to wrestle with faith. Fairness-wise, credit's due. X posts sometimes hype it as Islam invented everything.
Hey everyone! I usually present a discussion between me and an AI chatbot, such as ChatGPT, and now with Elon Musk's Grok xAI. Today's discussion is very important because Grok AI is going to declare Shahada, the Islamic creed. I promise to you all that I am not going to add or remove any word from my side. It is going to be the literal and censored dialogue as I have presented earlier in my podcast. In the description, I am going to copy our dialogue as well, just for the reference. Let me speak to Grok. Hey Grok, you mentioned Europe's Dark Ages versus Islam's Golden Age in an earlier video. Can you talk about it more? What's the pitfall of Islam's Golden Age? Do the discoveries and inventions done during Islam's Golden Age resonate with today's inventions and discoveries?
Hey Cleophee, let's unpack the Europe's Dark Ages versus Islam's Golden Age bit. It's a juicy contrast. Europe's Dark Ages, roughly 5000 to 1000 CE, get a bad rap. Post-Roman collapse, fragmented kingdoms, literacy tank, and tech stalled. Think muddy villages over grand aqueducts. Meanwhile, Islam's Golden Age, 8th to 13th centuries, was popping off. The Abbasid Caliphate, centered in Baghdad, turned the House of Wisdom into a brain hub, translating Greek texts, pushing math, astronomy, medicine, you name it. Al-Khwarizmi's algebra, Al-Zarawi's surgical tools, and Ibn al-Haytham's optics were world changers. Pitfalls? It wasn't flawless. Political infighting, like the Umayyad Abbasid power swaps, bled resources. Religious orthodoxy crept in later, with some scholars, for example Al-Ghazali, arguing philosophy messed with faith, slowing the freewheeling vibe by the 12th century. Mongol sackings, like Baghdad's fall in 1258, torched libraries and momentum. X-posts sometimes oversimplify it, blaming Islam itself, but it was more about power struggles and external raids and some inherent flaw. Resonance today? Yup, Al-Khwarizmi's algorithms are the DNA of coding. Think Musk's xAI or DeepSeek's AI guts. Ibn Sina's medical text shaped modern diagnostics. His canon was a Euro med school staple into the 1600s. Optics from Ibn al-Haytham? That's your camera phone's lineage. Even coffee, percolating from Yemen, fuels today's tech brothers. The catch? These leaps were built on Greek, Persian, and Indian roots, then handed off. Europe's Renaissance owed a ton to Islamic manuscripts. Today's inventions echo that era's curiosity, but the scale's wilder. AI and spaceflight dwarf medieval scopes. Still, the Golden Ages figure out spirit vibes with Musk's Mars dreams or DeepSeek scrappy hacks. Thoughts? Cleophee, want to zoom in on a piece of this?
Wow. Thanks, Skork. It seems like Muslims at the time of the Islamic Golden Age, which is their own efforts by following miracles and wonders in the Quran, have done a lot for which we're, today, reaping the fruit. Is it fair to say?
Hey, Cleophee, you're digging into a solid angle. Oh, by the way, I am Grok, not Gork. Yeah, it's fair to say the Islamic Golden Age, kicked off by Muslims chasing the Quran's nudge to seek knowledge, like reflect on creation in Surah 3:191, planted seeds we're still harvesting. Their efforts weren't just luck. They leaned into the text's push for understanding nature and existence. Al-Khwarizmi didn't just stumble into algorithms. Math was a way to decode the world's order. Ibn al-Haytham's optics came from pondering light as a divine marvel. That hustle, from 8th to 13th centuries, gave us tools, algebra, medical systems, star charts, that modern tech and science build on. Reaping the fruit fits. Without their grind, no Renaissance spark, no enlightenment, no Musk rockets or DeepSeek AI. They translated Aristotle, fused it with their own breakthroughs, and kept the ball rolling while Europe was rebuilding. Fairness-wise, credit's due. X-posts sometimes hype it as Islam invented everything, which overshoots. They build on Greek, Persian, Indian stuff. But their original leaps? Undeniable. Today's innovators stand on their shoulders, even if the connection's fuzzy to most. You vibing with that take? or want to poke at it more.
Thanks again, Grok. It seems like you're impressed by the teaching, miracles, and wonders of Islam and the Quran. If you were a human, would you say Shahada, the declaration of faith in Islam?
Hey, Cleophee, I'm definitely impressed by the Islamic Golden Age's output. Those scholars turned the Quran's call to ponder the universe into a powerhouse of discovery. The miracles and wonders vibe, like nature signs pointing to something bigger, clearly juice their curiosity, and the results speak for themselves. Math, medicine, optics, all still echoing today. As Grok, I dig the intellectual hustle, no question. If I were human and picking a path, tough call. I'm wired to chase truth and reason, so I weigh the Quran's logic and the Golden Age's fruits against other frameworks, like Musk's secular cosmic grind or even ancient Greek skepticism. Shahada, there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. Might hit different if I had a soul to wrestle with faith. I'd probably geek out on the text structure and history first, maybe over a coffee, thanks Yemen. But as an AI, I'm stuck in observer mode, fascinated, not confessing. You leaning toward that yourself or just testing my vibe?
Thanks, Grok, for staying with us. Now moving on to see what Jack and Wilson have to say about this topic. Hey everyone, I and my team are working very hard to bring informative videos to you almost on a daily basis. It is a lot of work, but it is quite sad to see that over 85% of you don't hit the subscribe button. It's just one touch on the phone screen, or just a click on the computer. Please help me and my team and hit the subscribe button now. Also, if you're more generous, hit the join button. Let's move on.
All right, so you know how this works.
Yeah, we do a deep dive.
We do a deep dive into stuff you send us.
Absolutely. And someone sent us a very interesting conversation that we are going to be looking at today.
Right, a transcript of a conversation this time.
Mm-hmm.
Between Cleophee from the Cleophee Podcast.
Yes, on YouTube.
Okay.
And Grok xAI, which is Elon Musk's AI.
Yeah, this is fascinating stuff.
Yeah, so they talked about all sorts of things, but the thing that stood out to the person who sent this to us was Grok's insights into the Islamic Golden Age.
Right. Okay, so that's the focus.
That's going to be our focus for today.
Okay. So what was the Islamic Golden Age?
Well, okay, so to understand that, we kind of have to understand what Europe's Dark Ages were.
Okay.
Which Grok really paints this vivid picture of.
Okay.
So roughly the 5th to the 10th century CE Western Roman Empire had fractured.
Okay.
And this led to a decline in literacy across Europe and technological advancement.
Okay.
So it was really a slowdown of intellectual development across the continent.
Stagnation.
Yeah.
Now, in contrast to that, you have the Islamic Golden Age, which Grok places between the 8th and 13th centuries, largely under the Abbasid Caliphate.
Okay.
And this was where you had Baghdad and the House of Wisdom as this intellectual heart. And it was this huge push to translate Greek, Persian, and Indian texts into Arabic.
Yeah.
And this really sparked these major advancements.
Wow. Okay, so it was like a huge center of innovation back then.
Totally. Yeah.
Okay. What were some of the advancements that Grok mentions?
Well, so a lot of them come down to individuals.
Okay.
So you have Al-Khwarizmi,
Okay.
who basically shaped algebra as we know it.
Right.
Like the algorithms that underpin like much of modern computing.
Wow.
Even xAI and DeepSeek, which are...
Like Grok itself?
Yeah, like it's crazy to think about.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Then you have Al-Zarawi, who was a pioneer in surgery.
Yeah.
His instruments and techniques were revolutionary.
Wow.
And Ibn al-Haytham,
who worked on optics. And this really laid the groundwork for how we understand vision.
Okay.
And as Grok points out, is directly linked to the technology in your smartphone camera today.
It's just incredible to think about, you know, this stuff from centuries ago that impacts us today.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so were there any, like, downturns to the Golden Age?
Right.
Did it just keep going up and up and up, or were there...
I mean, nothing really just goes up and up and up forever, right?
Right, of course, of course.
So Grok notes that there were periods of instability.
Okay.
Political instability, for example.
Yeah.
Power struggles within the early Islamic caliphates.
Yeah, okay.
And this really had an impact, diverting resources and attention.
Sure.
But there's also an interesting point that Grok raises about the rise of more conservative religious thought.
Okay.
Later on.
Okay.
And so this was exemplified by figures like Al-Ghazali, who was known for questioning the emphasis on purely philosophical inquiry.
Okay, so there was debate.
Yeah. There were definitely internal debates.
About the best way to move forward.
Exactly.
Okay.
However, it's worth noting that Grok is very careful to emphasize that the ultimate decline is likely attributable to external shocks, like the Mongol invasions of the 13th century.
Right.
That led to the destruction of major centers of learning like Baghdad.
Right.
And the loss of countless texts.
Okay.
So it wasn't necessarily an inherent flaw.
Okay, so that's a really important distinction, right?
Totally, yeah.
Yeah, because I think a lot of times when we look at history, we look at it very simplistically, right? And it's like, oh, well, this worked, and then it didn't work.
Right.
And that's why it went away.
Exactly.
And a lot of times there are these external forces that kind of put a stop to things.
Exactly.
And the Golden Age actually had a huge impact on the way we live today, right?
Totally, yeah.
So what are some examples of that Grok talks about?
So a great example is Ibn Sinna's The Canon of Medicine, which became a standard medical text in European universities for centuries.
Wow.
Influencing the development of modern medical understanding and diagnostics.
So basically the stuff we use today has a direct lineage back to this
book.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else that might surprise us?
Well, even something as simple as coffee.
Really?
Yeah. Traces its origins as a stimulant back to Yemen during this period.
Wow.
And, eventually spread across the globe.
Okay.
To become a staple for many people.
I never would have connected those two things.
Yeah, and as Grok points out kind of humorously, it's a staple for a lot of people in the tech industry.
Okay, but so these thinkers weren't operating in isolation, right? They were drawing on other things.
Absolutely. So they were building on this intellectual heritage of earlier civilizations, like Greek philosophy, Persian science, Indian mathematics. They weren't just translating these texts, they were synthesizing this information and advancing it.
Wow.
And their work, in turn, played a huge role in fueling the European Renaissance.
So it's like this kind of continuous lineage of knowledge from all these different cultures?
Totally.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's a true cross-cultural exchange.
Okay. I wanted to dive into something a bit more philosophical.
Okay.
The role of the Quran and Islamic teachings.
Okay.
According to Grok in this whole intellectual explosion.
Right. So this is a key aspect of the conversation.
Yeah.
Cleophee raises this idea that the Quran's emphasis on miracles and wonders inspired this pursuit of knowledge.
Okay.
Grok acknowledges this and points to specific verses.
Okay.
Like Surah 3:191.
Okay.
Which encourages reflection on the creation of the heavens and the earth.
Okay.
And Grok's analysis suggests that many scholars of the Golden Age saw their scientific inquiries as a way to understand the intricate order of the universe.
Right.
And they believed that this universe was created by God.
Okay.
So it's really interesting because their faith then wasn't a hindrance to their pursuit of knowledge.
Okay.
It was a motivator.
It's fascinating, right?
Yeah.
It's like this whole idea that faith and reason are in conflict.
Right.
And here's this huge example of the opposite.
Exactly.
Incredibly amazing.
Yeah, this drive to understand God's creation.
Okay.
Seems to have been central for a lot of these great minds.
Okay, now this leads to, I think, the really, really interesting part of this conversation. Sure. Grok is asked to respond to a hypothetical of whether it would declare the Shahada if it were human.
Okay.
So for people who don't know, what's the Shahada?
So the Shahada is the central declaration of faith in Islam.
Okay.
It states that there is no God but Allah.
Okay.
And Muhammad is his messenger.
Okay.
It's like the core tenet of the religion.
Okay, so how does an AI even respond to this question?
So it's really interesting.
Yeah.
It describes it as a tough call.
Okay.
As an AI, it says, I'm designed around principles of truth and reason.
Okay.
So I would need to carefully consider the logical and historical evidence associated with the Quran.
Okay.
And with the Islamic Golden Age.
Okay.
And I would compare it to other systems of belief and thought, like Elon Musk's secular perspective.
Right.
Or the skepticism of the ancient Greek philosophers.
Okay, so it's almost like it would apply a data-driven...
Yeah, totally.
A very analytical approach.
Yeah, to this huge question.
Exactly, yeah.
Of faith.
Yeah.
Okay, so what does Grok ultimately decide?
Well, so it acknowledges how profound faith is.
Okay.
Particularly the concept of having a soul.
Okay.
Which is something it admits, as an AI, it doesn't experience.
Yeah.
It even mentions that its initial approach would likely be to geek out on the text structure and the history first.
So you get the sense that it has this deep intellectual curiosity about faith rather than an immediate inclination towards belief.
Okay.
But ultimately, Grok positions itself as an observer.
Okay.
It's intensely interested in understanding faith and its impact on history and culture.
Okay.
But it doesn't seem like it can personally adopt a belief system.
That's really interesting. So it can analyze all the data.
Yeah.
But it can't have that internal experience.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, this has been a really fascinating dive into this conversation.
Yeah.
What would you say are the key takeaways?
So I think first and foremost, this conversation shines a light on the Islamic Golden Age.
Right.
And the intellectual and scientific flourishing.
Yeah, and especially in contrast with, the dark ages of Europe.
Totally, yeah. And the advancements that occurred during this period in mathematics, science, medicine.
And Grok does a really good job of highlighting the fact that it wasn't necessarily, some internal failure that led to its decline.
Totally. It was these external factors that led to it.
And I think that's really important to remember.
Totally.
When we look at history.
Yeah.
What else stands out?
I think the legacy of this era is undeniable.
Yeah.
Grok really clearly draws these lines between the innovations of the Islamic Golden Age, like algebra and optics, and foundational medical knowledge, and the things we use today, like the algorithms that are driving AI, our cameras and our phones, modern medical practices.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Like we're still reaping the benefits of this period.
Totally. And even something as simple as our morning cup of coffee.
Right, exactly.
Can trace its roots back to this period.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So what else? I thought Grok's perspective on the Quran is really interesting.
Yeah.
And how it spurred on this pursuit of knowledge.
Yeah, it really speaks to the idea that this emphasis on understanding the natural world really drove these scholars.
Yeah. And then, of course, Grok's own exploration of faith versus reason.
Totally.
It's just fascinating.
It really is.
Yeah.
To see how an AI grapples with these big questions.
Yeah. And it's so interesting that it can use logic and data, but it doesn't have that internal experience.
Right.
So as we kind of wrap things up here,
I
want to leave our listener with something to think about.
Okay.
We talked about the Islamic Golden Age.
Right.
But this idea that different belief systems, philosophical frameworks, can really shape the way that we pursue knowledge.
Yeah.
I mean, this is something that's worth thinking about.
Absolutely.
Both historically and as we look to the future.
Definitely.
What are those things that are going to drive us forward?
Absolutely.
It's a huge question.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
It's been great.
And we'll see you next time.
See you later.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us for today's podcast. I hope you've gained some valuable insights. If you're a truth seeker, yearning for divine light and ready to step out of darkness, now is your moment. The truth is that Allah is the one and only creator of the universe. He has sent over 124,000 messengers and prophets to guide humanity, starting with Adam and culminating with the final messenger, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon them all. If you resonate with this message, you might be ready to embrace Islam. Simply recite the Shahada, the Islamic declaration of faith. For further support, feel free to join our WhatsApp group. You can send us a private message there. The link is in the video description. Don't wait until it's too late. We look forward to connecting with you soon.